Hi, my name is Dan Paulson, and this is video 3 in a series where I'm going to be making comparisons between the teachings of Lao Tzu from the Tao Te Ching, Buddha from the Dhammapada, and Jesus in Jesus' teachings. Not the New Testament, not Roman teachings, Paul, but just what Jesus says. Those three people right there in one group. If you're new to what I'm doing here, I'll post a link down below to the first video in this series and the second video. My whole channel is about this ultimately. Looking to see what is nested in there and finding out that there is one common teaching that exists throughout the world, and all of these outer shells that are different are all carriers for that one common teaching. And I'm looking at the common teaching. And honestly, there's a point in looking at these where I just recognized a process that is, it's more complicated than finding out what is nested inside of a fable. But it's very much that same thing. It just has a lot more parts to it. And that is exactly what I'm doing here. I've spent a lot of time just working out that puzzle. And what I found kind of shocked me. And I'm sharing that. But it's observable. You can see this if you watch. It's a networking thing, though. At first, it's a little complicated, maybe. But it's like driving a car. At first, when you start, you don't know what to do. Put it in gear. You have to think about every move. And you don't have very much awareness. Your world is very small. And the more you practice, the better you get at it. Pretty soon you're doing it on autopilot. This is exactly the same thing. It's kind of like a language thing. At first it's like, how does that work? But eventually you start seeing the bits and pieces. Some analogs, I will tell you, are incredibly simple. They are not difficult. And I will also tell you that not all of the teaching is in analog. Analog is only one of the ways of doing it. Analog is simple. If you're in the physical world and you're consuming, you're eating, then you're consuming food. And you can eat bad stuff or good stuff. When we take it in the spiritual world, if you are consuming fish, loaves, whatever, something like that, you are wiring. You are wiring your brain. You're taking in something. When you are consuming, you are watching television, you're listening to the radio, you're engaged in conversation, your mind is flying off. You could be alone. Your mind is not quiet. It's wiring. It's active. It is continuing to develop and strengthen the existing networks, if nothing else. Again, we can consume things that are good for us or bad for us. We can wire ourselves in ways that are positive or ways that are negative. So that whole eating is analogous to learning. When we clothe ourselves in the physical world, we're covering up our nakedness. In the physical world, you probably want to keep your clothes on, but in the spiritual world, you want to get naked. Clothes in this case means you're trying to cover up something that you want to hide. So you want to remove garments. The garment and clothing then is the analog for something inside that you must do. And that's how the analogs work. It'll continue to work that way. And, we are vessels. We have a conscious and a subconscious mind. Something in their vernacular, what would have showed up would be probably thinking mind, carnal mind, conscious mind, soul, spirit, something somewhere else that is inside that they didn't quite realize. They didn't know we had a brain and how that worked. The body has all of these sensations and feelings, and you connect with your environment. You feel that. You feel life emotionally. That would have looked like a soul. We know that is based on our thought, the electrochemical processes in our brain, connection to our whole body and the environment. What is very important in here is to understand there are 3 components that we're always working with. You have to be on board with these 3 parts: conscious, subconscious, and a field that we coexist within. That field is incredibly important. You have to understand that. That field, when it is present, is what opens up minds to the world of supernatural. That field allows things to go everywhere. That is the field that makes people go all over the place because they sense that, they feel that, but we don't understand what it is. It's a natural thing. We belong together. We're individuals, but if you step back and look at it, you will see that humanity is an entity, and we as individuals have different roles. But the big thing is that field is there because it appears in all of the teachings. It is actually there in different ways. Lao Tzu is going to call it the way, the Tao. That is the way of life. That's what you're existing within. Buddha will call it something different, but Jesus is going to, the teachings of Jesus and how it is nested in a religion is going to teach the same thing, but it's living in the graces of God, having God reward you for doing the right things. Your life will unfold in a different way. We're looking at the results of what we go through. Okay, so one of the very bottom line important things here is that this way, this path, this field is how we operate and how we function in life. Once we become the individual entities that we are with whatever packaging we have in our brain and the way that it exists emotionally is how we move through that field and continue to experience life. And if we don't change here, that field, we continue to flow through that field. We're always in that field. How we flow through that field is dictated by what we hold up here. Okay, and that field is made up of all the other humans and all of their experiences. So if you have shame out there in that field, you're going to find shame, lots of it. Anger, hatred, judgment. Your life is going to flow based on the things that you have decided upon in your life, based on the experiences that you've had and how you processed, how you continue to hold those. The emotional charge is actually the issue that you're looking at right there. That is what dictates our continued flow through that field and our life experiences. Metaphorically, it's like that's the ocean that everybody is flowing through that ocean, and you've got to get someplace and you want to go somewhere, but along the way you keep having bad experiences. You keep knocked off course all the time. And it's the things that we're holding up here metaphorically that are like little rudders that take us off course. And the objective then is to get rid of all of those little rudders that take us off course and just have one big rudder that takes you to where you want to go. And that's going to be what the basic teaching is. Over and over again, almost boringly so once you see this. There's no magic. It's everybody's version of physician, heal thyself. It's just not in plain language. All right, and I've been kind of gradually becoming aware of another understanding as I try to work through the analogs, and I'm trying to figure out how do I dial that in better? How do you explain that? What am I doing? Sometimes it feels intuitive. And if somebody said, how do you know that's what it is? I think, I don't know how I know. And I'm still trying to figure out how do I explain it. And I think I finally figured it out. Use your imagination, go through the teaching, pretend like you are actually going through it. What is the effect? What does it do to change your life? Doesn't matter who you're invoking or how you're learning it, whether you're doing it internally or whether you're turning it over to God. If you are forgiving like you're supposed to and getting rid of the pain and the hurt and the shame, the change is going to happen regardless of what you think it is the cause. Okay, let me start right away with Lao Tzu's very first verse. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. I'm going to stop right there. Let's analyze that. The Tao, the way, that is how your life experiences happen. The way that can be told is not the eternal way. So the way of life that can be described is not the eternal way. How could that be so? This is saying you can't describe or tell how it is. Okay, so using this process then, these verses always decode inside the mind, inside the person. You grab it and it doesn't happen out in the world, it happens in this world. So then, the way that can't be told is your way. Your way. No one can tell you your path. Let me say this. When you do this, the path is inward. Everybody knows that once you make that transition, it is no longer about the supernatural universe out there. It is now about the natural inner being and this unified field that we exist within. Once you get to that transition, things actually make sense and unlock. And of course, you make it about your subconscious mind. But beyond that, This teaching is a very personal teaching. All of the teachings are personal teachings. So this is about you, and it's about your life, and it's about your life experience. Or it's about me, and it's about my life, and it's about my life experience. This is packaged in a way for anybody who goes on this search. It's ready for you it's encapsulated for you. And the outer teaching is good as well. The inner teaching, once you decode it, the outer one is actually kind of difficult to accomplish sometimes. So the inner teaching is the one that we always can manage. We can manipulate it. We can engage with it. It can change our life. There's steps. There's steps that we can take. And that's how we recognize them. Or in this case, what we have then is this recognition that you know, or that I know, what I have to do. I might not tell you. I might not tell you that I got molested or that I got hurt or have shame or something like that. I may not want anybody to know. Those are the things that I have to go after. These teachings are telling you have to resolve all of that stuff. People don't like to. At any rate, that is what we have to go for. And the reason nobody can tell you is because nobody knows what you have inside. This is your trip. No one can tell you your path. The path is inward, and the path is cleaning that stuff out. But beyond that, nobody knows what your stuff is. That's how I read this. But it also then is kind of letting you know that you turn inward, and this is about you. That's it. I would go so far as to say by implication, because there's always, multiple sides to everything, that this additionally means that the people that are in groups looking outward, that all have it together and they can all tell each other what to do, Lao Tzu is saying that's not the way, that is not the way. No one can tell you what the way is. Your way is your way. Okay, there was a second part of that verse. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. This is a fun one too, and it doesn't exist alone as a complete standalone verse as far as a teaching. What we're going to learn if we continue to go through Lao Tzu's teaching is that naming things is what happens. That is where we judge things. That is where we have an experience in life that we're aware of. And it can be a happy experience, a bad experience, whatever that experience is. That when we have that experience and we decide whether we like it or don't like it, and we remember that and we store that away, we put it into our brains and go, cool, we have actually named something. And that is the beginning of, that's one of those little rudders that at some point in time is going to take you off. I'll use molestation because that's one of my childhood experiences. And it was something that I didn't want to deal with. But throughout life, as long as I kept it hidden away, I continue to have all kinds of conflict and experience surrounding that pain. Once I resolved it and understood that, what it was, and I put it to rest and changed the emotional way that I feel about it, life changed. That's the example of it right there. I named that experience. What it happened is, God, I'm ashamed. And throughout life, I keep finding shame until you get rid of the way you feel about that experience. Then the shame changes. Your flow changes. You see why it's not a popular teaching. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. If you can name something and you can say, yep, that's pain, that's judgment, that's prejudice, that's whatever it is, that is not eternal. You have limited the power of your capacity to produce your life in that area by saying, I'm going to keep this part of who and what I am tied up with this judgment or that pain or this hurt or something. It begins to become your, it becomes your conflict, your inner conflict. It is what divides you. It is what makes you split, become two. It is what makes the divorce happen between the husband and the wife. The conscious and the subconscious can become different. And what that means is sometimes you do something, you act out, and later you're like, oh my God, what happened? Why do I do that? I'm sorry. We've got something happening inside of us that they recognize too. They're calling it demons. They're calling it, naming it. They're calling it a number of things. We got to put that stuff to rest. But we know its point of origin. Well, what is Lao Tzu right in the beginning telling you? You got to turn inward and don't name anything. Jesus in the I'm going to paraphrase this, but in the very first verse that he teaches in the Sermon on the Mount or the Sermon on the Plain, they're very similar, is blessed are those who are poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of God. Blessed are those who are empty of convictions, for you have a good life. Same, right off the bat, they're teaching the same thing. They sound different, analogs are different. What is the effect? Go through it. Process it. What is it telling me about myself? They're all the same in different ways, in different packages. Opening them is the tricky part. You see it though, right? You see this. Jesus again entered the kingdom of heaven within as a child. A child hasn't developed those convictions yet. The child has not become divided in life. They're still devoid of their anger, their shame, their judgment, their hatred, all of those things. They have not become split yet. And kingdom of heaven within, like nirvana, are analogs for just inner peace, happiness, joy, once you turn it inward. And I'm not going to keep going on Jesus. That's something that most of us are probably familiar with if you're on my channel. It's the one I'm most familiar with. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. Jesus is easy. He is like the easiest of all the teachers out there. And I'll just have to tell you to take my word for it. As we get into it and you see it, you'll realize, boy, it's a very, very simple. His are very simple. Buddha's and Lao Tzu's can create, you have to process and process and process. You saw that first verse, how to turn it inward. Jesus's, I think, was simpler. It was easier to know that, he said right off, poor in spirit, boom, devoid of mental convictions. That was simple. That was an easy transition. Lao Tzu's, not so much, naming things and, what is real, all that. It's a little more obscure verbiage, even though it'll still get you there. It's it's just a different story to nest the same teaching. Okay, moving on to his very second verse. This is how important this stuff is. This is sequence of life. All of these teachings are, here's your life. Here's how you started. Here's where it got messed up. Here's how you fix it. All of them are that way. That's a bit of a nutshell, isn't it? Okay, next verse. The unnameable is the eternally real. Naming is the origin of all particular things. So we just look at those again and you realize you have to turn those in. They have to be up here. They have to go inward. The unnameable is the eternally real. We just covered that in the last one. What is eternal is not named. It is everything that is there that doesn't have a judgment on it. It's whatever you can do that isn't black, white, red, colored, religious, somehow, some way, hateful, judgmental. That. You don't name anything. You just are open. You're open to experience. That doesn't mean that you are okay with people hurting people. That is not the same thing. This is an internal process. This is you existing without internal turmoil. Naming is the origin of all particular things. And this just starts shoring it up. Remember, it says, or look here, it says particular things. It doesn't say all things. It says particular things. It's starting to narrow things down. Naming is the origin of all particular things up here. This is the same as Jesus saying, do not judge. For the judgment, yeah, we got that. Naming is when you decide, I've had this experience. I'm going to give it a name. It sucks. It's shame. It's judgment. It's hatred. You've named it. You've put it away. You have now put a rudder in place. Yeah, this is what is happening. Okay, and for this video, I'm going to jump around a little bit. I'm not trying to teach Taoism again. I'm just trying to show how this works or how I believe it works. Another verse that's early on is the Tao doesn't take sides. It gives birth to both good and evil. That is actually verse 5, or the beginning of verse 5. And this is simply saying, yeah, that the way life is, be good or bad, doesn't matter. They both exist there. The Tao is not something you're trying to achieve. You're there. What you're trying to do is change the way you flow in the Tao. And you'll find everything there, good and evil, and all points in between. Now let's get on to some serious analogs. Number 11. All right, I will piecemeal this one a little bit and take it section at a time. We join spokes together in a wheel, but it is the center whole that makes the wagon move. Okay, we take the verse, we take those components, we go inside and we make them parts. Remember what we're doing here. We've got a conscious, we've got a subconscious, and we've got a unified field that we're moving within. These parts work in there. The spokes together in a wheel, but it's the center whole that makes the wagon move. The wheel is something that cycles. It goes around and around and around, but it goes based on what is in the center. And we already know that the Tao is the way we're trying to flow, and the wagon is what is moving through that flow. The wagon's going to go here or there or wherever based on what is in the hub. The hub then is going to be what we're holding inside of here, and it can be good things or bad things. This is like my rudder in the water analogy. The analogs here are the hub, the hole that's inside. It is that part of us. It's our subconscious. It is what we hold inside of us that continues to create us as the wagon moving wherever we're moving. Okay, that's one. The next one, we shape clay into a pot, but it is the emptiness inside that holds whatever we want. We can now look at that and see that it's actually teaching the same thing as the first verse, but in a slightly different style. It's the same teaching right here without even going to a different religion. He's using different verbiage, all of them do, to continue to roll the same lessons out over and over again. Jesus has a striking parallel to this one, but let's look at it first. Same thing. We're looking at the pot. We are the pot. We have shaped our lives into whatever it is, and it is the inside is holding whatever we want, but what we want might not be what we want actually. There might be times where we're thinking to ourselves, I don't want this stuff inside of me. But what do? We hide it, we put it behind walls, we try to encapsulate it, and it becomes a creature and a monster tucked away in a closet or a bunch of closets, right? We're looking to get the emptiness so that stuff doesn't act out. Same teaching. We hammer wood for a house, but it is the inner space that makes it livable. Again, same thing. Same teaching, different analogies. You see that the pot went to a house inside. Yeah, we create the house based on that. What's Jesus clean the inside of the cup? Because the one who made the inside of the cup also made the outside of the cup. That's us. We're the ones that make that cup. The pot, the clay pot inside. Yeah, we need to empty out ourselves. Whatever we hold inside of us dictates the quality of ourselves, of our life, of our Tao, of our flow, of our experience with our Heavenly Father. However you want to call it, it's okay. Okay, I'm going to keep jumping around here, and it might seem random, but there's actually a purpose to what I'm doing in the jumping around. I think it's some of the stuff is easier to understand than others, and it's probably better to. Yeah, okay. I'm going to go to this one for a reason. Empty your mind of all thoughts. Let your heart be at peace. Watch the turmoil of beings, but contemplate their return. Turn it inward. Always. Empty mind of thoughts, let your heart be at peace. Let's set that off to the side for a second and go to the second part. Watch the turmoil of beings, but contemplate their return. Beings is an analog being used by Lao Tzu here that means the bad characteristics. They're used all over as weeds in the garden, skeletons in the closet, demons that possess you, ill offspring. Somehow the stinky women, if you go to Myth and Jason and the Argonauts. These are analogs of something that you have produced. The beings are your beings. They're your characteristics. Watch the turmoil of beings, but contemplate their return. Are they all? What we're looking for specifically here is the bothersome things. Remember that wheel coming around and all the other stuff. It's building to realizing that turmoil comes back again and again. Contemplate the return. Okay, What the verse is telling us overall here then, to empty your mind of all thoughts, let your heart be at peace. When you're acting out, screaming and yelling, you got triggered again, begin to recognize, okay, this is that problem that I have. I blow up about this and I need to understand it's not important. I need to let it go. Something in my past is triggering me and I get mad and it builds up, it explodes, and then it tapers off. It builds up, it explodes, and it tapers off whenever it gets triggered. This is the sequence. We see it. It's not hard. We apologize, maybe we don't apologize and we think we're right. There's a point where we're losing it. We're not at peace. We are at turmoil and we're exploding. This is telling you, empty your mind of thoughts. Recognize that that's happening. Let your heart be at peace. Watch it come, watch it go. Buddha taught the same thing. Watch it come, watch it go. It arises and it subsides. Watch it come, watch it go. Don't interact with it. Watch it and observe it. Don't experience it. Watch it. Step outside of yourself. Contemplate their return. Realize that you're being triggered, that there's something in there that's coming back around and around again. Figure it out. The verses go on. This is about healing, and this is just one. But again, it's how to look at the verses and employ the analogs and to engage and to interact with it. I find that all of these verses and all of these teachings are interactive steps. There is nothing that is faith-based, sit back and wait till you die. Not at layer 3. Everything is interactive. Do this, you'll have a better life. If you don't want to do it, then there's other outward-looking options. You can abide by the religion completely outwardly, and it'll get you to the same place. Okay, before I end this video, I want to do some comparative. I don't know why, but I like this part. It's like, okay, they all taught this part right here. Here's how it's done. So I'm going to jump to a Buddha verse. This is the very first verse in Buddha's teaching, the Dhammapada. This is how he starts telling you to seek this path. All experience is preceded by mind, led by mind, made by mind. Speak or act with a corrupted mind, and suffering follows as the wheel follows the cart. Okay, this one should be actually pretty visible now after going through the Lao Tzu one. Lao Tzu is a little more complicated. It's not as easy. Buddha has some plain language close to it. This one is not too complicated. Yeah, all experience, that means our life, the way our life unfolds, all experience is his way of saying it. Your experience, all of it, is made by how your mind has functioned, how you have thought. Speak or act with a corrupted mind and suffering follows. That is not enough. This is where we have to make sure we turn it inward. Corruption can exist in our mind even if we're not acting it out. Okay, it gets triggered. Speak or act with a corrupted mind, that implies kind of a physical manifestation at that point in time, but it's going to come out. It's not enough to say, I'm going to keep quiet. I am angry about that, but I'm not going to say anything. No, that's not good enough. The anger is what dictates your flow. That is what you must resolve. So corrupted really is that. That is the part of you that is, it is corrupted. It's a part of your programming that you don't like, but it's in place. It got there, and it's up to you to go clean it out. As the wheel follows the cart. How simple is that? Cyclically coming around and around and around again. We see right here Buddha is teaching what Lao Tzu is teaching. Now, let's jump to Jesus for a second and see what he's got to say. Okay, so in the works attributed to Jesus, there's three kind of main styles, maybe two. One of them is just a short one-liner verses, is very short little quips, like in the Sermon on the Mount or the Sermon on the Plain. The other one is teaching parables, which are a little bit longer. And then what we have is little stories, what's called Jesus's ministry, where it's basically taking the same teachings and it's creating a path going from place to place to place, almost like island hopping or something like that. it's written as Jesus's ministry, but it reads like the hero's journey. It's an epic journey. It sure is. So I'm going to go to Matthew 5:23-24. So when you are offering your gift at the altar, if you remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First, be reconciled with your brother or sister, and then come offer your gift. Okay, what are you doing if you're at the altar? This one, it might be easier to just pretend like you are just a really solid Christian or a believer, a Jew from 2,000 years ago, and that you are, what are you doing? You're going to give a gift at the altar. Why are you giving a gift at the altar? You want God's good graces. Life is tough. You want food, and your kids need new clothes. So when you're going to give a gift at the altar, you are invoking a positive relationship. You are humbly on your knees before God, your creator. You are attempting to invoke his good graces. And what is this telling you to do? If you're trying to invoke God's good graces, if you want that good life, but you realize you got some baggage you're carrying, you got things against people, aught against your brother or sister, and those aren't people out there. Those are people in here. The brothers and sisters are the offspring that are the results of your experiences and how you store them away. I hate something, you got to change that hate. I'm ashamed about something, you have to change that shame. You have to convert things to love. Then life unfolds in that way. Jesus' teaching here is the same that we just covered with Buddha and Lao Tzu, but you see the radical difference. How do you spot the similarities in them? Pretend like you live them out. What does it do? What does it do for your life? In the first case, it's telling you this cycle comes around based on what you've got inside of you. And the second one from Buddha tells you this cycle comes around based on what you have mentally thought inside of you. And this one is telling you right here that if you want to invoke God's good graces and get into the good flow of life, that you must get rid of that stuff. All of them are the same teaching, but they're weird to see, aren't they? You have to play it out. You have to pretend in your imagination like you live it out, and then realize what effect did it have. You don't have to keep doing that. You can at some point look at it and go, okay, I see the pattern. I see this repetitive pattern over and over again. And you know, if you've gone through this process through, Christianity or Hinduism or Buddhism or whatever, if you've gone through this nesting process, you're good. You've seen it all. Well, they fight amongst each other based on what is on the outside of them, not as what is on the inside. It seems like they were structured for people the way civilization is. I don't know. Hard to go there. Start speculating things. It's there though, and it's mechanical. You can look at it and go, psh, yeah, there's no magic. It is it's a puzzle. That's it. It's a puzzle. Okay, well, with that, I'll keep the video shorter. I don't know if that matters, actually. Guys, give me some feedback. When I go look at the statistics on my videos, they get viewed from start to finish maybe 3 or 4, 5 times. There's a lot of views that are on there that are actually like just quick flash through. People are like, oh, I don't know what this is. Click off and go. It shows it as a view, but it's click-through rate is high. There's not many of us that go all the way through with this. And I think that that's always been the case. But I can interact more with you. It would help me. Sometimes I don't know what to do. And if somebody asks a question, okay, yeah, I don't know why. It seems like it's daunting to me. There's so much there that I don't know how to approach it. And maybe sometimes somebody asking a question and saying, can you cover more on, Jesus here or there or something like that. But I want to stay in the frame of what I'm doing. And right now I want to keep it simple with Lao Tzu, Buddha, and Jesus, those three, because of the small nature of the verse. Buddha, honestly, he's got a very small condensed version of Hinduism. Jesus, very small, compressed offspring of Judaism. You know, all this stuff absolutely fits that category of, I don't see it until you do, and then you can't unsee it. And it's almost like all you have to do is turn and look a different direction. It's odd. Anyway, this has to have been their common practice, and it's just still in place. It takes a lot of time, and my life has had a lot of time, free time. I've had jobs even where I would be on the road for a week at a time, and I'm working solo, driving maybe 12 hours to get to a work site, complete silence, radio off. I've had hours and hours and hours of time that I think it's pretty rare for people to get these days. And this is really, honestly, it's just working it over and over and over in your head every possible way until it starts linking up. You start making links. Once you see it, though, it's like, oh, yep, it's visible, and it's a mechanical process. There are steps. Do this to create a verse, undo that to pull it out. It's that simple. Strange. We can grasp it. We'll bring it down to earth. Anyway, if you do that, this is what comes out of it. Not everybody likes it. You can see why it's a small thing. Until the next video, love one another. And yeah, throw some comments down below. See you next video.